There's a lot of different things I could tell you about the case study with WGroup. I'm the CMO there. But I wanted to highlight the concept of C-level advocacy, because I think for those of us in the room that are marketers, the C-level is sort of the most elusive prospect you can get to. And I think if you create a program that works really well for C-levels, it ends up working really well for other folks in the organization. So I'm going to talk a bit about our program, how it works. I'm going to talk a bit about the metrics. We have metrics around sales generated, pipeline influenced, engagement, clicks, all those kind of things. And I'm also going to talk a bit about the operating model. How does it work? How do we go from content through to sales with employee advocacy in the center of it? The first thing, just to level set, so the company, so the WGroup is a CIO peer-to-peer advisory firm. All the consultants are former CIOs. All of the customers are CIOs, for the most part. IT leaders, some CTOs in there, but mostly senior level IT leaders in the enterprise segment. So the customers are companies like Disney and Coca-Cola and folks like that. Very hard to get a hold of individuals are the buyers of WGroup. The firm was founded by a former CIO. It was founded by the CIO of Campbell Soup back in 2004. And overall, the company operated for a period of time as sort of the founder had a couple consultants he knew, he had a couple clients he sold to, and the company just sort of got along for a while. And then most recently, we've taken it on a really aggressive path of revenue growth with marketing and advocacy at the center of that. But the unique part of it is as a consulting business, there are many other consulting firms that have sort of the leverage model with the partner and the mid-level people and the junior people. The business is all CIOs doing the consulting work directly in a peer-to-peer way for other CIOs across things like strategy and M&A and transformation and organizational models and outsourcing decisions and things like that, generally for enterprise-level companies. The challenge was, let's go back to 2015. As I mentioned, the company was primarily individuals who were sort of selling to a small group. There was 20 people in the company. There was probably 10 clients at any given time, and the company operated that way for about 10 years. The founder wanted to see aggressive scale, see a business that was many times bigger than it was today. And thankfully, he was a big proponent of marketing. He was a big proponent of using sales and marketing as a way to drive a business forward. So I joined as the head of marketing. And the first thing I did was I built a marketing strategy, right? You put on your CMO hat and you create this demand generation model. You start to think about content. You think about marketing tech you're going to buy and deploy. You think about programs you're going to run in campaigns. You think about the brand message. You think about hiring some SDRs. You think about the operating model of how it's all going to fit together. You think about the people you need to bring in. I did that. But I saw a really unique opportunity in this world of WGroup with all of these consultants who had been CIOs. CIOs are connected to mostly other CIOs, right? So there's this network opportunity that the traditional marketing tactics we all use wasn't monetizing and leveraging and bringing enough value to us versus what I thought we could get. And I also wanted to shift the WGroup brand. As a consulting firm, I think your brand is based on the thought leadership that you have. The things that you say are why people hire you as a consultant to give them advice and help them on problems. And so I wanted to shift the firm towards a thought leadership mindset. I wanted to mine those consultant networks in a way that would be more impactful to our sales and revenue growth. But I also had this headwind that everyone was so busy. And for those of you that have worked in professional services firms or consulting firms, the holy grail is being billable, right? So your consultants are, and especially in this world, they're very expensive consultants. They're very expensive on the bench, very expensive when they're not doing consulting. So everyone was off doing consulting all day. There was no time to do thought leadership. There was no time to support marketing. There was no time to help my social media aspirations with a bunch of 50 and 60-year-old people that really didn't understand social media at the core. And so there were some issues that we were dealing with. If I fast forward to today, the company's 3 times as big. It's got 5 times as many employees. And there were some real successes from the employee advocacy program at the center of that I'm going to highlight. I'm not going to talk about all the other marketing things we did along the way with SDRs and other technology and other forms of content. I'm going to focus on just the advocacy element in the center of that. And so we can directly attribute $1.1 million of revenue that came specifically from an advocacy action. We can attribute $1.9 million of pipeline. we can attribute $23 million of influenced. Influenced in our world means some engagement happened, and then somewhere along the line an opportunity popped up. But it may not have been directly connected to the engagement, but there was certainly a engagement and then an opportunity. You could infer that marketing had something to do with that, but you can't directly attribute it. I did not put in here, but we do track also accelerate, touch, the standard pipeline attribution metrics that most marketers are trying to wrap their head around. And then some of the vanity metrics we can track in our program in our advocacy program with Gaggle. We can track over 7,300 clicks. We can also track almost 8 million impressions through it. We just did a case study with Gaggle as well, and there's a blog that just was published last week about some more of this information and this data. I think it's a really powerful story of impact and results. But then there were some other halo effects around there where we saw the other brand metrics go up: web traffic, social followers, likes, likes, shares, things like that, comments. We saw some unexpected benefits, like our employees started reading our content that we were pushing out through amplification with the goal that they would share it with others, but they were reading it first. That was pretty cool. I hadn't expected to see that. We also saw anecdotal feedback from our customers. When we would go and see them or consult with them, they would say things about what we were writing. And they would proactively bring up ideas based on things that we've said, which is, I think, the real success of when your customers have internalized your propaganda into a way that they are using it to help themselves become better IT leaders. And lastly, along the way, the recruiting team found out what we were doing and sort of jumped on board. And so while it originally started as a sales and marketing focused program and a brand focused program, it became a program that our HR and recruiting team really valued. And so let me tell you what every day looks like at WGroup today. So there's a post that goes out. I know some of this is really tiny, you can't see it. I'm happy to share the slides with anyone who needs them. But every day there's a post that goes out from WGroup on social, mainly LinkedIn and Twitter in our world, that shares some content item. Either a WGroup content item that is our thought leadership, could be a lead gen content item like a webinar or a paper to download, could be a thing that we're sharing from some other third party, some curated content from HBR, Harvard Business Review, or other groups that we agree with most of their philosophies, or it could be a bit of a selfie content about us, about something in our business, about something we want to promote. So every day that goes out. And then in addition, we also run the amplification engine on it, and I think many of you in the room know how this works, but for those that are new to the idea, we create the post, we queue it up into Gaggle, it goes off to our 100 consultants. Each of those have on average about 1,000 connections in the market, and then each of those shares those connections. We've done some analysis to kind of dedupe those networks. We think there's about 55,000 individual folks connected to our consultants that then consume the content. Some of that content is free, ungated, you read it. Others is ungated, the drive's degated. Others go straight to a gated experience with a registration form. And that's how we drive down our impact and lead and through our funnel by driving some form. Probably about 20% of our content has some kind of registration form or gate in it. And that's where we get the sales metrics in the pipeline. But every day we do this. Every day we run this machine and share thought leadership primarily through the channel. And I think there's 4 elements we have working together to make this a reality. And while the technology is important, and the technology is vital, and it couldn't happen without the technology, there are many other pieces that we bring to bear to bring this engine to life. The first is, so we use Gaggle as our amplification engine. We also use Salesforce Pardot for our registration forms, our landing page experience, and our lead routing. And then we have sort of a content production engine. In our view, the content production starts with a subject matter expert that has something interesting to say. But we also created a content team. We actually created it offshore in Malaysia through an agency named 2X, who does all of our writing, content production, content creation, and all of the things you need to turn that idea or that perspective that the subject matter expert has into content that can be shared. So writing it, designing it, doing the promotional copy, curating content from other third parties, and also atomizing a thought leadership paper into 5 different blogs and things like that. We have that offshore, and we have an agency that helps us manage all that. So that content function makes it very simple for the subject matter expert just to do an interview and share their idea or their thought, and then the rest of it is all handled by marketing. We also have a marketing ops function that comes into play. I have a philosophy, if you can't tell already, that the analytics, the data, the impact has to be shared. Has to be shared with the board, the leadership team, the employees, the people who contribute to the programs, the agencies, the partners you're working with. Marketing exists to create impact. It exists to create value. And if you can't measure that and demonstrate it, I think you're really going halfway to what marketing should be. And so we have some tech, we have some analytics. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on this, but being able to make sure that content drives to a registration form at some point, maybe first, maybe second, third, fourth touch, that engagement can get assigned and tracked in your MarTech stack, whether that's Pardot or Marketo or HubSpot, whatever it is, and being able to attribute that to an individual lead, to an influenced, to an accelerated, to a touch, to an engagement on your named account list, all those things. Having a marketing ops engine that can constantly do that and match that data together and give you the analytics and information, I think is vital to proving value from programs like this. And then lastly, there's some governance and change management. I believe strongly that culture is top-down, and in our case, we had to have some top-down conversations with our whole company about this effort. One being that thought leadership drives brand. And if we all want our company to be bigger, and we all want our brand to be more well-known, we have to become thought leaders. And we have to become not just people who have interesting things to say, but visible thought leaders that the market can see, that our peers can see, that our prospects can see. The second idea, or the second principle that we have, is that content drives marketing success. Clickbait doesn't work for a long term and certainly at scale. And so you have to have substantive things to say to help your prospect do their job better and solve a problem. And that content needs to be the core of your marketing engine. And lastly, you have to measure and optimize for engagement. How it works in practice is another view of that. So either the subject matter expert, the consultant, or in sometimes the marketing department has an idea of, hey, I think we should write a content item on the topic of technical debt. It's really popular now. Or I think we should write about information security, or why you shouldn't go to the cloud for everything. We'll have some idea that will come up somewhere in the organization, sometimes during a consulting engagement, sometimes part of the sales process, sometimes a consultant just has an idea. And so that idea comes in, we have a writer do the interview and extract that idea out of the subject matter expert's head, usually a 30 to 45-minute interview. Then the content item gets produced, again by our agency offshore. Then we publish the content item with some type of demand creation or demand gen experience. Then we amplify it through our social channels. Then we'll take that content item and atomize it into many different, so we don't have to have an interview every time we want a single content item. We try to create a large item and then atomize it into 10 different items that have, one paper with a bunch of different blogs, things like that. We'll republish and constantly reshare that information and then manage the reporting and report it up to the sales team, to the leadership team of the business. Examples, simple creative, right? So you have your posts. In our world, we do a lot of different kinds of creative treatments on a post. It could be because in our world, we're talking about peer-to-peer advice, peer-to-peer guidance, peer-to-peer thought leadership. We'll actually use our consultants and their ideas and their quotes as creative. We'll also use self-help guides or checklists or things like that. We'll use content items. We'll use visuals that show the asset that we're offering to someone. We'll drive the reg pages in some cases, certainly the whole standard thank you page experience. Many of us in marketing have been doing that for a long time. And then sometimes as well, we've seen this, we will drive to an ungated item, which is very good user experience. So you can share content and someone can click on it and consume some part of it. But then there's some gated activity as the next step after. So in this case, you have content item driving to, hey, you want to read more, you can download this whole paper. Or if you want to get in touch with the expert that wrote it. So you have two different call to actions attached to the item. So you have a way to get a lead out of a content piece that you're sharing. 4 of our best performing posts. I know these are probably way too small to see, so I'll talk you through what they were. The first one was a post of, hey, we're hiring. And good thing in our market, our consultants are CIOs. They're connected to other CIOs. When we're hiring consultants, we're hiring former CIOs. So there's a bit of a community of, hey, we're looking to bring on some CIOs that have experience in financial services or pharmaceuticals or other areas. That was actually our most engaged post, which was great because, again, I built this as a lead gen and sales and marketing program, not as a recruiting program, but the recruiting benefits were significant for us. We also, our second most was a Harvard Business Review item about leadership and about why giving feedback to your employees rarely does what it's intended to do. Leadership topic, nothing to do about us, nothing to do about our story. Another one was we made the Inc. 5000. We were really happy about that, and we got a bunch of people engaged with that. Total content selfie. It was all about us. It was all about our business, but was very well engaged with our followers. And lastly, a content item like that blog I showed earlier. And so when we built our engine, we knew that we wanted to have some type of variety in the content. If all we're doing is talking about our corporate information, our selfie content, our self and our points of view, that gets old real fast, right? And people tune that out. Nobody wants to feel like they're being marketed to all day, every day. And so we wanted to create a content model that had our customer, the IT leader, at the core, but to create content that was relevant to them in their whole professional space. So whether that's our thought leadership to help them learn more about things that they run into as an IT leader, to new job opportunities that could be relevant to CIOs, to advice and articles about leadership and how to be a better manager and a better senior leader in an organization, to content that helps you work together with your board, that helps you manage the relationship with a CFO, helps you think differently about how to implement some of these new buzzword concepts like Agile and all these other DevOps and programs. And then also things like how do you build political capital when you're a new CIO. So all these topics weren't all about us. Some of these, probably a third of these, we have services related to. The other 2/3 were purely about our buyer, our prospect, and how we give them content that helps them do their jobs better. It helps them become better CIOs and better IT leaders and better professionals. And then we've earned a right to tell them who we are because we've given them advice that's meaningful. We've given them assets or information that they value. And we've brought it sort of in a very simple way to them through our network of employees versus through them having to follow our corporate channel. So 6 best practices. I always wondered who gets to call a best practice, and I guess standing on a stage at an event means you get that chance. So I'm gonna name 6 things I think are best practices when it comes to driving C-level engagement, getting leads out of a social amplification program, measuring the results of it, and also running a program that you can talk to leadership about is a really good success. One other thing I should mention that we spent a lot of time with both our C-level community in our business, so our CFO, our CEO, our founder and chairman, as well as our consultants. And I was stunned to find how many prospects they were connected to through LinkedIn and other places. I think if one thing to take away is don't underestimate the value of your C-level executives, their networks. Their networks are gold mines for your business. And many of them are happy, certainly, to toe the corporate line and share information about your business. They need to be asked to do it. That you need to go on and configure their LinkedIn to snap into Gaggle. You have to do that for them. But once they're plugged in, they become tremendous supporters of the program. And there's a lot of value in their networks that isn't getting mined in a lot of cases. So on the best practices. First one, never forget the role of marketing. Marketing exists to create revenue. It exists to create leads, it exists to create demand, and it has to be tied to pipeline, in the B2B space at least. Any programs, I believe, that are solely focused on brand and brand alone are sub-optimized what you could have. You can really great demand generation, really great digital marketing, really great lead generation programs drive brand value versus going straight to brand and expecting leads will follow. And so never forget that as your core. Don't be afraid to put a reg form in front of somebody. Don't be afraid to share content that means that you're going to get a lead out of it. That's the role of B2B marketing. That's the role of a B2B CMO. Top-down endorsement. So our program was heavily endorsed by the CEO, who thought it was the coolest thing he's ever seen. He was like the first guy in line to sign up for it. He was the former CIO of Campbell Soup. He was sort of a legendary figure in the company and one that was, through his own abilities, able to get everybody excited just by talking about it. I think that's really important. So he's now moved into a chairman role. We have a new CEO. Both the CEO and the chairman are both the most active Gagglers in our network to this day. They see the value of it. They believe so strongly that thought leadership drives the value of a brand. And so they're the biggest advocates for it, which I think is really powerful. Integrate into the onboarding. This is something we came up along the way. So this program's been going on for about 4 years in our case, and we constantly, the shine of it wears off, and you have to find a way to keep it fresh and keep it new. And we found that as we were growing so much, the new employees didn't know what it was. And some people, will seek you out and say, everyone's talking about this Gaggle thing, or how come it looks like Harry's so active on social media? I know he's not. What are you doing to make him look so active? And so we decided to put a presentation like this into the onboarding information that every new employee at WGroup gets, so they can understand, what is the Gaggle program? Why is thought leadership important? Why does marketing care so much about content? What is the impact of the effort? Why does doing this have any value on the business? You can kind of handle that issue when they're new, indoctrinate them early on, and get them as part of onboarding to log in and sign up. We don't have any of these crazy legal things that you guys are bringing up, which I don't envy at all. But as a consultant, you are a thought leader, and you will be visible talking about interesting things in the market. And we just expect our people to do that. We expect them to use their brand, their network, to share our information, because it makes them look like better thought leaders. It helps them engage their C-level connections, and getting them early on and telling them that story we found was fine. It wasn't a big deal, and they were also very happy to participate. Some of them, a lot of folks in our company transition from CIO to consultant. And so they're moving out of being an operator into this consultant world where they're supposed to be a thought leader. And they saw this program as a way to elevate their brand for them. And so marketing's doing all this work to help me look better. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm happy to be a part of this. Internal advocacy, never stop advocating for advocacy. We talk about it in every quarterly all-hands meeting. When we present the results of marketing, we never let them forget that your network, your brand is, tremendously valuable to the company. We constantly remind them about the impact. I mentioned there's $1.1 million of revenue we had. Every consultant in the firm knows what that deal was, what those deals were, who those clients were, how we got them, and they know that social drove it. And so we're not afraid to continue to talk about that in our space. You have to vary the content. I've seen a lot of programs go really bad because they just become a corporate mouthpiece of the company, where all they're doing is talking about whatever thing the company has to say. And people just opt that out. They just ignore you. They just turn you off follow, and they don't unfriend you anymore. They just unfollow you. So you never even know you've been, muted. But they're in charge of what they consume and what content they get. And so certainly you have to vary things that are interesting to them. And then lastly, drive the vision and outsource the execution. There's a lot of difficult work in making a program like this successful, from creating the content to all the marketing tech things that need to work together, to the analytics, to the programs. All of that is very difficult to do. None of you are in that business. Find an agency, find a partner, find someone who's really good at it, and give them that problem to solve, and you worry about how to manage your brand and how to manage your domain creation programs to greater success. That's my story. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for Domenic?
Yes.
So great that you could measure all the way the revenue of 1.1 million. Did you, and how did you calculate all the investment required to get the 1.1 million?
Yeah.
In terms of people's time, agency, platform?
Yeah, so the way we calculated it is we calculated the investment on Gaggle relative to the 1.1 million, and that's an ROI we have there. And separately, we calculate the investment in some of the shared services, like some of the agency work or the marketing tech platforms or the other things, and we attach that to the overall impact of marketing. And so we don't try to attribute shared costs into individual programs and then elevate the cost of those programs so that you have, and so that's how we decided to do it. And the way I found is, as long as you have an ROI story, and we spent not a lot of money on that 1.1 million, as long as you have a really good story there, I find that you kind of get the trust of, okay, you're measuring things, you're having ROI, and you kind of get you get less pressure to show, a really accurate, fully burdened and weighted cost of what it took to deliver. And so our view is show that this small program has individual success, and then report on the overall success of marketing, and don't try to blend the two.
Thanks. Thank you. I actually have a two-part question. The first is, when you were talking about the content generation and sort of that life cycle, you work with an offshore consulting firm, two times marketing, is that what you
2X,
said?
yeah.
2X, is that the only content you're generating? Are they only generating content for your advocacy specifically?
So they generate it for all of marketing.
All of marketing,
Which
okay.
supports our email campaign, supports our social advertising campaign, supports advocacy, supports our blogging, our SEO, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to use the same content for all of those different channels.
Right.
And so advocacy is one stream of sharing that information.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's no like in-house content generator that you
Nope.
have? Okay. And my second question is, what does your approval process look like? Because in the life cycle that you showed, it was interview, creation, post, amplify. Like,
Yeah.
where's approvals in that?
Yeah, so there's a couple. I didn't put them on the slide. So the consultant who participated in the interview will usually get to approve the draft of the asset that was produced, and usually there might be an iteration in there where they want to adjust some things, but it's light. It's generally, I mean, we've gotten to a point with our agency where they know the voice and the brand and the story. And then we used to have a gating factor at my level or at my number 2 that would approve every post before it went off and every campaign. And we realized that we were just always hitting the approval button. We found that we got to a point with our agency where they knew our story and we were willing to let that ride. And I think that so far it's been okay. But
I'm very envious.
I think if you have to get a partner, as there was a comment about agencies not being so great, you have to find one that you trust. You have to find one that you can feel really confident that they get your story. Because if you're having to approve and redo their work, they're not helping you.